If you go back to the Eye of the Beholder 2, Lands of Lore, Dune 2, we like doing cinematic, placing the story. So even though we liked strategy games, we always liked setting up the story and making sure people knew the why of what they're doing. So when the next game we were going to do was going to be a CD-ROM game, we were part of Virgin. They were doing Seventh Guest, and they had a Wavy, and so they had these video players. And Brett, I still remember Brett came into my office. There were a couple other technology guys there by then, but I was certainly regarded by Brett as a founder and everything as one of our chief technology problem solvers. And he goes, "Hey, Lou, we need to do full screen audio video and do basically movies." And I go, "Well, Brett, we're looking at the CD-ROMs, and you just can't do it. It's like it's just an audio stream. You can't encode video in that." And he goes, "Well, you know how to do compression. You're just being lazy. Just do it, And so we went out, we researched, I know with Yates and some of the other folks that worked there, we went and researched Bink and all these other programs. And I can tell you...
Smacker back in the day before...
Smacker, yeah, there was a bunch of them. We looked at all of them, and I can tell you that none of them would work. Not at full screen on a single speed CD-ROM. They were just, and it was off by the orders of magnitude. It was not close. And so we had hired some folks, some PhDs from, I believe it was the University of Washington, but I could be wrong there. And we had started working on some very cutting edge vector quantization that was being used as trying to augment the MPEG compression formats, which had come out at that time. And the reason all this work was being done at the time was people were trying to figure out how they were going to get video over the internet. Because now we're talking, it's not 1995 yet, so Microsoft hadn't done Windows 95, which is what kind of really set the world on fire when it comes to the internet. But it's still, you had like Web Crawler, and you had
Alta Vista and
Magellan.
Oh,
and,
sorry.
Yeah, you had Matador and all these other different. Yeah, you had Netscape. So you had ways of perusing data files, and you had hypertext markup language that was using video. Anyways, long story short, again, very, very technical problems. Why I kept getting looped in was because the old compression methodology that we had used to use fast loaders on the Commodore 64, and we had used to crunch everything onto the 1.4 megabyte or 1.2 megabyte floppies, 1.4 megabyte mini floppies, so hard floppies. We had already done a lot of compression, really, really clever compression, and most of that stuff I had written. And so we were able to take the work that they had done academically, which was able to get the data sets down to really small, and then use the compression stuff that we had done to be able to compress those data sets losslessly so that we could get to the rate. And then once we could get it working and we had the things going, then we turned it loose on the artists, and Aaron Powell had done this CG stuff using 3D Studio Max.
Yeah, Aaron's a buddy of mine. We go way back.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. And so he was so involved in that in the beginning because, it was like, well, we're going to do the same thing we've done before with Rick Park's going to paint these things and slide them across the screen and all that. And we're going to compress all that. And Aaron's like, dude, you got to be able to do this. We can do this. And so he would take video of himself in front of a white sheet and put him on an aircraft carrier deck. That was one of the shots that was in CNC. And he just convinced, between him and Felix Kupas on Lightwave, it was kind of him and Gooch were always doing the Lightwave thing. There was sort of a rivalry inside of Westwood of which software would create the best looking images. And long story short is they started creating these sequences, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's what we're going to do with CD-ROM then. And at least the cinematic part of Command & Conquer was born. And the last piece I think that the real kudos go to is Joe Kukin, who was... Brett had known him through local theater scene, I think. But Brett or maybe Mike. Mike was very good friends with Kukins. And so Joe was doing some production work for us as producer on some other things. And he was hired literally because he had these skills to identify and direct the talent. A lot of it had to do with the charm of that whole thing was Joe's ability to take those stories that were written by Brett and Edie and Joe and Joe Bostic, and then turn them into performances with local acting talent, and Joe Kukin, of course, himself playing Kane. So really interesting stuff that all had to come together to make a game, and that was just the story side of it. It had nothing to do with the actual game. Yeah. The game itself was also innovative in so many ways.
Let's just talk about the cinematics for a moment, where you're going to make a video game and suddenly you're kind of making a movie at the same time. And on top of that, like Jurassic Park had just come out like 2 years before that, so to look at what you guys were doing is pretty revolutionary.
Again, there were other people, Chris Roberts was doing stuff over in Origin, and there were other people definitely, like I said, even the guys down at Seventh Guest, I can't remember the name of Trilobite. So there's lots of people doing other videos. So we happened to be at the same time as a lot of folks. It wasn't so unusual in that sense, but what was different was, I think Joe had a really good idea of what the cinematics were providing for the game, which was really sort of set up and payoff, and they weren't actually a movie. They were little vignettes. In fact, we talked a lot about making a movie, and I think we certainly had ambition, but we understood that having an actual cinematic department to make movies would be a much different and bigger problem to solve.
Right.
We didn't fancy ourselves. In fact, I think many times we'd go back and forth on this, but Brett and I had the conversation many times and said, you know what, we're not movie makers. If we're going to get to the point where they're actually films, we need to bring in more people that know what they're doing. And in fact, we did. Over time, I would say all the CNCs by Tiberian Sun, we were bringing in world-class actors, production teams. We'd still have Joe doing the direction, not just because of the legacy, but because he did it well and he understood the franchise really well. We went down to a couple of filmings because by the time Tiberian Sun came out, everybody was doing video of some sort. And we did some stuff down in Virgin, and you could tell right away when you walked in and you saw a video game guy that was trying to direct actors and did the craft, you got a real appreciation for how much Joe Kukin brought to Westwood.